Hi, welcome back to week 2 of AERO 4613, the Safety Management Systems course. As you can see, this is going to get very involved. We are not trying to make you a professional safety analyst in this class, but we have to give you enough information to give you a good background to understand what a safety management system is in an aviation environment. As you graduate and go out into the real world, whether it is in an aviation maintenance program or in a flight training program or an airline, you'll find that all of these programs now have their own safety management system. But these are all driven by directions from ICAO, and certainly our primary motivator is the FAA. The two systems between ICAO and FAA are slightly different. I'm going to highlight one of those differences here very shortly. You'll see we've got quite a bit of reading in the textbook this week. So dig in early and keep reading. We're going to be reviewing again the 4 pillars that go into any type of safety management system, whether it be in aviation, whether it be in medicine, or any type of thing. These are the 4 pillars that the governing agencies, such as the FAA, will direct the field to develop and use when developing their safety management system specific to that organization. Those 4 pillars, again, are safety policy. That's a statement, and that is usually a pretty thick document that is written by the upper management of that company. They might copy directly from the FAA, or they're going to put in variations of that comply with FAA requirements, but direct how we're going to manage safety in this organization. So it's very important that of all these pillars, the safety policy be the forerunner to tell us what we're going to do in this organization. Okay, safety policy. Number 2, safety risk management. I spent most of my 12 years, the latter 12 years of my career with the FAA in helping the FAA, specifically the Air Traffic Organization, develop their safety risk management procedures and policies that could be used out in the field. My goal was to take this from a very theoretical corporate level to a very usable, very practical, understandable, and useful tool out in the field. So my work with the FAA it was geared toward the practitioners and people that had their hands on it in the field. For me, I had to interpret the safety policy and simply make it make sense and be something that was value added to me out here in the field, so I could use it and apply it to whatever it is we're studying from a safety perspective out here in the field. So we've got safety policy with safety risk management. It is the most active part of a safety management system. It is the policy and procedures that allows us to take an issue that we're dealing with and analyze it, and it gives us the process, the procedures to do that. Now, ultimately, that is after we do the analysis, we're going to document that in safety documents, which are defined for us in our safety policy. But we're not going to be going that far in this class, just trying to give you an overview of how a safety management system is, what it is, and how it's used out in the field. Finally, after we've done a safety risk and management analysis and assessment, we turn it over to safety assurance. Safety assurance is the monitoring policies. We've already identified, okay, this is at an acceptable level of risk now for this organization. Now, let's follow this and monitor it and come up with procedures to monitor it to ensure that it stays at this acceptable level of risk. So safety assurance is the piece that kicks in that allows us to monitor something that we've already done an analysis on. And finally, safety promotion, the 4th of the pillars, is the training. It is promoting safety within the organization. Again, it's a very active component like safety risk management, which gets into how we're going to train this. How are we going to promote this to the employees of the organization, from the very top management levels all the way down to the newest worker coming into the facility. Safety promotion. All four of those components work together to support the safety management system for an organization. So they're four independent, but yet they work together to make up the safety management system. So we're going to review those this week. Our focus in our reading and in some of our studies this week is on the safety risk management piece, what it takes to do an analysis. We're not going to actually go through one yet, but explaining the process. And then looking at the safety assurance piece of it. We're going to be looking at definitions that are driven by AERO and definitions that are driven by FA. Now, they're generally the same, but there are some key differences in the process. Let me give you just a quick example. The process is defined by AERO for doing a safety risk management analysis is, number one, identify the hazards. Again, using definitions, and we gave you those definitions, and we'll give you them again this week. Definition of what a hazard is. Many people say the hazard is, for example, an aircraft crash. Aircraft hits a mountain, or aircraft goes off the runway. That's the hazard. No, that's not the hazard at all. You need to look behind that. What was a precursor? What was it that triggered that accident? That's the hazard. If you treat just the effect, or the accident, if you will, you never get to what was actually going on in the cockpit, failure of a component, etc., that actually caused the effect or the outcome. So look at that definition of a hazard. Look at it carefully. It's what comes before that. What is the precursor that eventually evolved into the outcome or effect? Right? So that's the same as the FA. Identify the hazard, number one. Number two, as a result of that hazard that we're looking at, one hazard, what's the worst credible outcome, also called the effect? There could be a number of effects, but looking at that with the eyes of numerous people on an assessment team, what's the worst credible effect? We could say flying an airplane is going to be hit by a meteor. Possible. Has it happened? I'm not sure. But data would show us that it's not really a credible effect. So we don't really look at it because that's not credible. We'd be wasting our time trying to control the path of a meteor. All right. So we look at the specific hazard. What's the worst credible effect? Now, again, I said we could have numerous effects coming from a specific hazard, but we'll look first at what's the worst credible. Could it really happen? Does data show us that it's happened? All right. What's the worst credible effect? All right. Then we assess, now AERO assess the likelihood of that first. Leave that there for a second. And then it assesses the severity. Likelihood is how often is this going to happen. Severity is how bad is it. From there, AERO develops controls to reduce the likelihood, the credibility of, how often is it going to happen, is this particular effect going to happen. All right? Develop controls. See if we can reduce the likelihood of that. Note, we never reduce the severity in our studies. We try to reduce the likelihood of that happening. All right? And then finally, the safety assurance piece kicks in. We define monitoring procedures to ensure that what we put in place, the controls we put in place, they worked. either yes or no, and if we need to add more controls, fine. We're going to, through monitoring, assess the legitimacy of those controls. Now that's the AERO process. I will say, as I mentioned earlier, I was on kind of the ground level of the FAA's attempt to implement a safety management system within the FAA, specifically in the Air Traffic Organization. I took one look at that and said, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, in that they were first assessing the likelihood of what? And so you'll find now, and I must say I'm the one who beat the table on this one, we now first, after we've identified hazards, after we've looked at the worst credible outcome, we then define the severity of that worst credible outcome. And you'll see that in your reading this week. How bad is it? And then we look at how often is it that bad. Now that's based on if we can find real live data out there, statistics that have been compiled before us. We can use that real live data to determine it's this bad. Data shows us it's however bad it is, and then how often is it that bad? When you put together the severity and the likelihood, we come up with a risk level. Now, in our safety policy, the organization has defined for us what is an acceptable risk level. Right? You'll see that in your reading this week. So that's why the safety policy piece of this is so important. And the FAA has done some of that for us in many of the documents that you're going to see this week. But we're going to, in the FAA process, we're going to look at the severity first, then the likelihood, then we'll come up with a risk level and determine, is that an acceptable level of risk? If it is an acceptable level of risk, we could just leave it right there. But we always attempt to, if there is a means of reducing the likelihood of an outcome, we should do that. That's just doing good, just prudence to this hazard that we're studying. All right, if we can cut down the amount of severe effects, we should do it because it's the right thing to do. Once we've developed the controls in order to reduce the likelihood, remember we never reduce severity, but reduce the likelihood of that effect, then we're going to jump into the safety assurance piece, which is to define how we're going to monitor this. What kind of data are we going to use? How are we going to study it? What we can compare it with? But we'll do that. All of this is done with the use of a safety risk management team. Now, I even, while I was with the FAA, went into develop coursework on how to be a facilitator of such a team, because there's some very unique skill that goes into facilitating such a team. And we're going to be studying that this week, digging into some more of the process of doing risk analysis as part of our safety management system. A lot of reading. You get a lot of references both in our textbook, also numerous FAA documents that are provided to you in links, some ICAO documents, all important. When you're looking at definitions, just compare the difference between what you see in ICAO and what you see in FAA documents. They are similar, but we're going to be using as our primary guiding documents our FAA documents. Now, if you happen to be out on a mission field somewhere working in Zambia, you'll want to use the documents that are driven by the Zambian version of the FAA. So anyway, we use the country to which we are doing the assessment. A lot of work ahead of us this week. I hope you're enjoying this broad overview. It's a little challenging for me because I have always approached this subject with much more of a hands-on practitioner viewpoint. I'm trying to keep it at that broad overview perspective and give you just enough detail for you get a good handle and understanding of the practice of safety management and the practice of safety risk management analysis. Again, I want to invite you to dig into 1 John chapter 2 this week and enjoy the way that that John, the Apostle John, gets up in your grill about the issues relative to sin. The feedback that I've gotten semester after semester after semester from 1 John was the clarity of how John approaches the people that he truly loves, that he's writing to. I need you to make this personal. Imagine if John is writing this letter to you, because my own perspective, this letter was written to me. It causes me to take the tests that we're going to start talking about this week that John is asking the people he's writing to look at seriously. So you say you're a Christian. Prove it. Now, as you'll see in my writing this week, I approach 1 John chapter 2 with a little bit of fear and trepidation because I got to take a look at myself. Each time I read it, I go, ugh, I got some work to do. Lord, continue to open me up and show me that work that needs to be done. And then, Lord, I invite you to do the work in me. I'm asking you as you respond each week to these devotionals that you get personal. Don't just tell me what it says. Tell me what it says to you, because that is such a gift to me and your fellow students who can read this. Get personal. I guarantee if you'll do that, if you'll look at this letter as if written to you, this will take on a whole new meaning for you. Anyway, welcome back to week 2 of AERO4613. I look forward to working with you again this week. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop me an email at jeffreykleinbeck@letu.edu. I'll be glad to get back to you just as soon as I can. Welcome back to week 2.